Greenwood-Sanchez is a candidate for the St. Paul City Council in Ward 5. He's running a grassroots campaign that's based on bringing voice back to the community and creating spaces of meaningful engagement with residents. He's a proudly Peruvian Minnesotan, and he's running to become the first Latino council member in St. Paul's history. His campaign focuses on reaching communities, in particular Latino voters, that have largely been excluded from city politics. Outside of this campaign, he's a professor of political science specializing in environmental politics. His research addresses the politics of genetically modified crops in Latin America, and he's conducted extensive fieldwork in Mexico and Peru as a Fulbright scholar. He's also an avid gardener and grows specialty Peruvian potatoes in Duluth, Minnesota. David, welcome to the conversation. How you doing?
Hello, Al. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Let's jump right into it. What brought you into city politics and to seek the city council seat in St. Paul?
Right. So it's this idea that in the city of St. Paul, and I'm from St. Paul, Como area, born and raised, and I love my city. But unfortunately, we're seeing something where where our neighborhoods, we don't have a voice. And I use this term meaningful engagement. It's something that people feel not just in my community of Como, but all across the city, where neighborhoods, communities, you speak your mind, you try and get your voice incorporated, but it's really it's become this check mark, this box that the city ticks and says, all right, we've reached out to the community and we've gotten your input, and we're going ahead with this project. And so we've seen this in so many different areas. I experienced it myself. To answer your question about how I got into this, about 4 years ago, in the Como neighborhood, we had a historic church building called the St. Andrew's Church. And I'm not religious, but it was really an incredible building that had a lot of historic value to it, architectural value, and most importantly, it was a space of meaning for the community. It was really something that tied us together. And what we saw was, my neighbors, my neighborhood, my family too, like lots of people who I know and who I love and trust. They got together and they did the work that you would expect and really that we would love to see in democracy, right? These are neighbors who got together, who showed, hey, this is a historic resource. This was designed by our city's first architect, Charles Hausler, who has these buildings on the National Registry of Historic Places. They got it registered, did all the things. And then what did we see? This box ticking. It wasn't real engagement. And really the thing that hurt the most was that by the time the community was really brought in, that project had already been, the forces were already there. It was going to go through no matter what. And we see this all over. I think people have experienced similar things with the trash debate across the city. They've seen similar things with rent stabilization, where the city goes after the vote and changes it around to something different. We're seeing a kind of a similar version with Summit Avenue, with the bike lane projects to build a bike lane that it's destroying a lot of trees, nearly 1,000 trees along Summit, a historic area that people are speaking out against. And that really the issue is anytime you speak out, you are shut down. You are a small vocal minority. Your voice does not matter. And to me, that's not right. And so I'm running a campaign, truly a grassroots effort to bring back, to create meaningful spaces of engagement for our community and to try and get our community voice back into the city council.
Tell more about your background. You say you were born and raised in the Como neighborhood. Talk about being a native of this community and kind of what that means to you.
Yeah, well, I love Como. It's a great place. I think that many people see that. Como's changed over the years, but we love Como in part. So to borrow a little bit from Latoya's point that she just made earlier about kind of the small town community feel, that Como has a little bit of that in its own way. Originally, Como, and it was really the Como-Warrendale community, it was created as a suburb to the downtown St. Paul area. And so originally they had clear cut that entire area of all of its trees, and it was designed to have this be this suburban getaway from the downtown. And since then it's changed, probably for the better. And so now we have our trees and we have a closer community. But in a way, I think that for the neighborhood and also for lots of parts of St. Paul, the reason we're attracted to St. Paul, the reason we love the city, is because it's not, a mega city. It's not the large one. We have our own identity. It's a place where we can participate and where we have this kind of this local politics where in theory we can get our voice heard and we can do the things that we know and that we love. But we see that changing. There's another project that I think has upset a lot of people in the Como neighborhood. I don't know if you guys have been through around Como Lake, but we have the incredible Como Pavilion, right? It's been there for a long time. It's a really great structure. And there's just as an example, there's another project that was just put out by our city council president, and it is to expand the Como Lake Pavilion. Right. And so it's all right, we're going to expand this treasured structure. And it's not just an expansion, it's a privatization of our building. And so it really tries to make it into a more economically satisfying place for the restaurant that is there. And so it will change the space that has been a public theater for people. And, from the area, you know and you love it. And you go there to see plays of Fiddler on the Roof in the summer and enjoy it. And it's just a great open community space. The project proposal is to transform that and to create a glass wall where that currently is open towards the lake, and to put the restaurant there, and then to move the public seating and to reduce it to about a third of what it has been. And so people look at that when you're from Como or really anywhere in my ward, in Ward 5, and you say, why are we doing that? Where does the need come from? This is a project that comes from, it's not coming from the people. The community isn't asking to build a better restaurant. Nobody's doing that. We want our spaces to be public and to be for the people. And so there's that component. And then there's also
restaurant there. That's where Black Bear Restaurant was, right? At one point in time.
Yeah, it had originally been a native-owned business. It was Black Bear Crossing, and that's another example as well, which is our city council president illegally broke the contract with the owner of that, and so he was booted from the site, and it changed hands, and it's kind of a shame. Well, it truly is a shame, because that could have been a native-owned restaurant right here in the heart of Como, and so that's what we're fighting against. We want decisions that don't come from a single council member or a single political leader, but we want things that come from our community. And, our community, we want to support native-owned businesses. We want to support public spaces. And the other part too is that, sometimes, it's no secret that St. Paul is out of money. We can't fix our roads. We can't do the basic things. And so why are we talking about expanding the Como Lake Pavilion, this beloved structure that's so fantastic already, when we can't even repair the roads? And it's truly, for people who know the ward and from the area, you go down Rice Street, go to like Rice in Maryland, and talk to the people there. And it's just such a slap in the face to our community members who are dealing with really, really intense issues of violence, of disinvestment, of lack of really investment in communities and youth organizations. And so the idea that we need to spend our limited money while we're, on top of it, we're taxing people out of their homes. There's a 15% property tax increase this year, but we need to spend our limited resources in order to do this thing that nobody wants, to privatize our public resources. And so that's what I'm fighting against. And that's why, to be honest, I've got a lot more support than I should. This is a true grassroots effort, and people are they're here to help. They want to bring our city politics back to the people. And again, we want to have Como and have really our entire city return to this idea where we have open spaces of local government, where people can have their voice heard, where you can call into your council member and they'll take your call, where they'll go and they'll respond to you. And that's really, again, that's what's at the heart of what makes St. Paul great. And so we want to get back to that.
We reached out to Wah Jung Kim, Nate Nins, and Pam Tollefson to invite them to be here. They are all competing with you for election to the Ward 5 seat, and we did not hear from them. If we do before the election, we certainly will bring them on. But differentiate yourself from those candidates.
Well, so one, I'm a professor of political science. I live and breathe policy. I have for my entire life. I'm from the area. I'm from Como, born and raised. I also have a foot in the door in other communities. And so it's not just one, but I'm Peruvian Minnesotan and very proud to do that, to be Peruvian Minnesotan. I've lived a good deal of my life as well in Peru, in Lima, and I've also spent a lot of time working in Mexico. And so one of the things that I offer that no one else does, in addition to being a true independent voice and offering this connection to our community, is to reach out to some of our underserved populations. And I use the Latino community as my example, but it's more than just the Latino community. It's really so many people. But I campaign with my mom in Spanish on the East Side. That's something that nobody else has done. I have signs. I think they're the first signs that we've ever had in the city of St. Paul that are Spanish. And they're designed to get our community back into politics. St. Paul has done historically a very terrible job of reaching out to our underserved communities and some of our communities that are really growing. They ought to take note of it and say, hey, the Latino community is growing faster than any other demographic group that we have in the country, and certainly in Minnesota as well. And so we ought to have those connections. But you go and you talk to people and you hear it. That's why I got signs all over, is that people are just excited to have someone who goes and takes the time to say hello, to stop by their place. Most people tell me, I mean, nobody's ever canvassed in Spanish before, but beyond that, most people who I talk to, especially when I get anywhere east of Dale and east of Rice, certainly, they say, we don't have politicians who come here. Nobody comes and talks to us. Like, this is the first time we've ever spoken with a political candidate. And, so that means something. That's a different form of engagement. And I think too, again, that's why I'm such a proponent of, this idea that we need to move outside of the political structure that we have at the moment, which is, a city that's dominated by one single party. Every single council member and the mayor, right now, they belong to the same political party. And, there's a certain technology that comes with that, right? You have these very sophisticated voter lists, and they tell you exactly who to go to. And the campaigning style that our city uses and that most candidates are using, including the St. Paul DFL endorsed candidate who I'm up against, they don't go door to door. They go to select voters. And when you do that, you end up with voters who fall through the cracks. So just about all of our Latino voters, all of our Latino residents, they won't appear on those lists. And then so many of our voters on the East Side as well, who historically, you can look at the voting records by precinct, and they're pretty low. So the voting records, they'll say on some of our precincts and the eastern side of the ward, it's about 15, 16, 17% of registered voters who will turn out on election day to vote, probably even less this year with an off-year election. And so the calculus that parties make then is, don't go there. It's not worth it. Spend your time in Como, the wealthier neighborhood, the wealthier area, because that's where people vote. And you can understand the logic to that. But at the same time, what does that create? It creates this cycle where so many people just feel like they're not a part of something. They're not a part of the city of St. Paul. They're, and beyond that too, for our political candidates, when they get elected, if you're just going door to door and talking to the people who are likely voters and likely supporters because they've been on your lists, you're not getting a full understanding of St. Paul. You're not getting what the ward is after. You're not listening to everybody. And so I'm a strong advocate of the old school way, going door to door, hearing what everybody has to say, and trying to have that reflect within your policies.
Do we have a picture of your campaign? Is that what that is? I'm looking at Cooper. What's the photograph here? That's you.
Yeah, that's me. That's me.
Okay. All right. Listen, thank you so much for being here. Let me move on. Good luck in your campaign. Good luck.
Thank you, Al.
Let's stay connected.
Thank you so much.